Thanks for joining us for another DK Custom Products video. My name's Kevin, this is Dwayne, and today we're going to be talking about the most popular mods for M8 Softails. Now, we've already done a video on the most popular mods for twin cam Softails. You'll notice in this for the M8 Softails, quite a bit different.
Yep.
So since Dwayne has a Milwaukee 8 Softail,
I do.
I'm going to let him go through the list. I'll just butt in every now and then if I have something to say. But he has almost every mod that's on this list on his M8 Softail.
Yep.
So let's get at it.
Yeah, now, one thing you'll notice, a lot of these are aesthetic modifications. You know, there's not going to be a lot of cooling components on here, not a lot of suspension components, because I think the Milwaukee 8 Softail is the best bike Harley has ever put out. There's always room for improvement, but there's not as much room for improvement on this as there would, like, say, a twin cam Softail or a bagger.
It's definitely the most trouble-free, best designed bike that they put out in the last 20, 25 years. No doubt about it. We did, when you got your M8 Softail, we did a test and we found out how good that humongous oil cooler is on the front of the M8 Softails. They do not have the heat problem that so many of the other bikes have. And we'll put that video up in the corner here.
Now, first on the list, the external breather systems with catch can, in particular the premium discrete with the transformer not far behind. So, man, the transformer's been a home run for us. And we did a whole video on it when we introduced it. We'll put that up in the corner, but it's the most the most advanced, in a lot of ways overkill, external breather system you can do. And we call it a transformer because we know some people, maybe inevitably all of us will have to one day do an inspection, an emissions inspection, and it's a way you can transform it to vent internally, at least temporarily, or if that's your prerogative forever, if you just like the aesthetic of the transformer, it can vent internally or transform to vent externally. So then it's a no-brainer. Number 2 on the list is the Outlaw air cleaners, and the 828 and 606 is most popular by far, with the Speed Fin and Fend being the most popular cover for the 828, and then the contrast cut Fend the most popular for the 606. Now, the reason the 828 is very popular on the M8 Softails as well as the M8 touring models is because it's wide, it's oval shaped, and it hides all those ugly electronics, that servo, all the wires to the sensors and all that are connected to your throttle body. Just hides that really well. It's also very low profile, so it gives you a lot of leg clearance. And on my bike in particular, the bike has floorboards, which are essentially forward controls. They put you in a similar position, so your knee and your leg is right up there by the air box. So if the air box is sticking out, you have a lot less leg clearance. So why not just get a low profile air cleaner that also invites more air than your intake can even consume? So there's no, if you have a basic stage 1 or 2, so there's no performance left on the table. So it's a no-brainer. The 828 is one of the most popular, but then not far behind that is the 606. At 606, there are thousands of cover options that'll work on the 606, and we offer several ourselves, but like the Arlen Big Sucker, their covers will work on our 606. A lot of Screaming Eagle covers. So the bread and butter of the air cleaner is the air cleaner, but if you like the aesthetic of the cover, there's a lot of cover options out there for you. So it's probably the most universal in regards to covers, and not including, but not limited to, the factory covers that mount with just a center bolt hole. So a lot of people like that sleeper look. So that's very popular on the 606. And then we'll move on to number 3, which are the Thunder Torque inserts. Those are at the top of all the lists we've done because they're a very popular modification, and it's probably the cheapest way to get a significant improvement in exhaust performance. They just make your exhaust run more efficiently. They cycle that exhaust gas out much better than not having anything in there. They increase the exhaust gas velocity. They prevent reversion. A lot of people like them because you can snatch your baffles out, replace them with the Thunder Torque insert, and it's all pros, no cons. So I like them because of that. The M8s already don't sound like a Harley, so you want a little more volume there, a little more thump out of the exhaust, and that's probably the best way to do it.
So when you got your M8 Softail and we started really digging into it,
Yeah.
we discovered a cluster. I mean, there's no other way to put it. We've still not been able to figure out any good reason why Harley took the simple standard foot peg that's been on all the bikes for decades and decades, and they changed it. Now it has a different clevis.
It's much wider.
that you mount the foot peg in, and now there's a spring, there's a ball bearing, and then there's some other kind of spring clip, all just for a foot peg.
It reminds me of a gas can. It's just way overcomplicated.
Yeah, so now it's just insane what they did with it. I don't, obviously we go, well, they did it so that you would have to buy their foot peg, but I don't think that's why. Whatever the case, so many people have so many different foot pegs, and they would like to run this design foot peg or this design foot peg or this foot peg that they had on their previous Softail or whatever.
And in my case, we had been making foot pegs for years. We had a whole lineup of foot pegs, none of which I could use on my new bike.
Right, because and so we obviously talked for 5 minutes about making these janky foot pegs for the M8 Softails and realized it's just better to make a foot peg adapter.
Right.
And we'll put a video on them up in the corner here, but basically what the foot peg adapter does, it just slips into the M8 foot peg clevis.
Right.
And makes it so that you can run any standard Harley foot peg.
That Harley has been making since the 80s. There's hundreds, there's thousands of different options out there. So you're not limited to just what Harley was making at the time.
That's the fourth most popular mod because it's just ridiculous what they did with it.
We'll move on to number 5, and that's the M8 Softail axle-mounted curved license plate reload. So Kevin just said they changed the design of the foot peg clevis. Another thing, a very obvious change, was the swing arm. Now they have the monoshock, the swing arm shaped a little differently, and where the axle passes through that swing arm, they changed the design of that. Now that axle was recessed. The axle nut was recessed. And in the past, I'll pull some pictures up here of how DK, as well as everyone, did their axle-mounted license plate brackets. It's just a flat bracket with a hole in it, mates up to your swing arm perfectly. So we had to completely redesign that whenever Harley started recessing that axle. So we were, at the time, the only people with an axle-mounted license plate bracket for the Milwaukee 8 Softails. I'm sure people have come along now, but we were the only people with that at the time. So that probably is a big reason why it boosted our sales on those, because, you wanted to relocate your license plate to the axle. The only way to do it was with the DK bracket.
The next item, number 6, is related to number 8. And I'm going to let Dwayne talk about both of those. But before he does, when I first did some test rides on the M8 Softails when they came out, and I did 2 different bikes, and we'll put links to those down in the description below. I love the power of the M8. I love the suspension on it. There was no wallowing. You get wallowing with the twin cam Softails. There was no wallowing. There was a lot to like. There was great ground clearance. You could really lean over in the curves and not scrape the floorboards. And there was just a lot to like about it. But the way that they gave you all that clearance for leaning over in the curves is they have those floorboards up high and back.
And tucked in.
You just feel so scrunched in that it was just ridiculous. I mean, that was, for all the things I liked, that was just, from the first test ride, apparent that the ergonomics was horrible on that. And so when Dwayne got his, he experienced the same thing.
Yeah.
And within, I don't know if it was a week or a couple weeks, you had the bike in the shop apart, and Devin was working on making floorboard extensions.
Right, because even prior to the release of the Milwaukee 8 Softails, we had made floorboard extensions for baggers and twin cam Softails, and it's a very popular thing to do. It gets your legs away from the heat, it gets your foot off the exhaust, which I had a big issue with, the heel of my boot just resting on the exhaust. And so, of course, we were going to make them for the Milwaukee 8 Softail. Well, it's a simple product. I mean, it's spacers that go between your floorboard bracket and the frame. So a 1-inch spacer between the floorboard bracket and the frame is going to bring that bracket and therefore the floorboard out an inch. Well, one thing we realized during that process is the Milwaukee 8 Softail foot controls were a little different than, say, on a bagger, where the shift assembly spindle, it's sort of remote. You can't relocate that anywhere. Well, on the Milwaukee 8 Softail, you can relocate the floorboards out. You can bring them forward, back, whatever the hell you want to do with them. It's not going to affect your foot shift control assembly in any way. And so we're like, well, if we can move them out, let's move them forward. Now you got extended controls. Now your feet are forward where they need to be, where you're less cramped. So they're out and they're forward. And that's why we developed the Floorboard Relocation Kit in addition to the Floorboard Extension Kit.
So there's two. Number 6 is where it puts the floorboards forward and out.
Mm-hmm.
And then number 8 is where it just puts them out.
Yep.
So if a person doesn't want any more forward room, they just want to get their feet away from the engine a little bit, not feel so cramped up, they can do that with just extending them outwards.
That's right.
You're running the forward and out
Yeah.
on yours, right?
Yeah.
And that does sell more than just the out.
Right. And that was product number 6 and product number 8. So we skipped number 7. Number 7 was the Fender mounted curved license plate relocation.
I don't even remember where the license plate was located on your M8 Softail Deluxe.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that one of the first things you wanted was to get rid of it.
There's a lot of companies out there making this very similar product. Harley has had that same 3-hole mounting pattern for a long time. If you had a 95 Sportster, it's going to be the same as a 2022 Milwaukee 8 Softail. So, but instead of buying one, I just finessed Devin into making me one. I was like, hey, Devin, I got a great idea for a product. He went in there, he bent one of our plates, he welded some studs to it, developed the damper pad that goes beneath there, and I told him, hey, let's make it as low profile as possible. And that's what we did. You had just enough room for the jam nut, the fasteners, to hold your license plate on there between the backside of this bracket and your fender. So, I was happy with how it turned out. Evidently, the customers are happy with how it turned out because it's in our top 10 best sellers.
Number 9 is the passenger foot peg support kit.
Mm-hmm.
And this was a crazy thing. When you got your M8 Softail, it doesn't even come with passenger foot pegs.
It does not.
And so you went to Harley and you spent $100.
It was like $130 actually.
$130 to get just a piece of steel that bolted onto the frame, that had a clevis on it. But guess what? To put the non-standard Softail foot pegs on.
Yeah, and to make the story even funnier, while I was doing the installation, I had an epiphany. We already have this product. We've already made foot peg mounts that would attach right here. And that's from our stealth adjustable highway pegs. And in fact, that's next on the list, and we'll get to that in a minute. But it's literally a foot peg mount with a pass-through hole where you can thread the screw through and thread it into the frame. And so we already had the product, so I felt kind of dumb even buying Harleys overpriced. So I went to Kevin and Devin and said, hey, let's pull these foot peg mounts out and repurpose them as their whole other product, because that's what they are. You can use these to mount foot pegs to your Milwaukee 8 Softail, and they're a fraction of the cost of the Harley one. They use the standard foot pegs that Harley has used for years. You don't have to use that fat clevis. You don't have to use any sort of adapters, and they just worked out really well.
So what's the last one, Dwayne?
And like I said, the last one's the stealth adjustable highway peg kit for mid-control bikes. So a lot of these M8 Softails, they don't have forward controls, they don't have floorboards, they got mids, and they're like right underneath you. And that's great if you like that sporty feel, not knocking that, but everybody likes comfort. And a lot of people don't like having big highway bars and things like that on their sporty bikes. I mean, if you have a Lowrider S, you don't want a big ass engine guard on there like it's some kind of big bagger, like you're some old guy. You want something something that's stealthy, something that kind of hides in plain sight. And that's exactly what the stealth adjustable highway pegs are for.
And what you were talking about, no, people don't want to put the engine guards on there because that's where people put their highway pegs.
Right.
So this is a way to get highway pegs, and we call them stealth because they're pretty low profile and they don't they're not obnoxious, but the other thing is they're adjustable. I think they have 4 positions forward and 4 positions rearward, so you can really adjust how close or how far away you want it to be.
And then, of course, they use the standard foot peg, so the traditional foot peg. So you have a much larger assortment of options out there for foot pegs than what Harley can offer.
So it gives the guys with the mid controls, you know, when they're cruising from the Dragon or from wherever they were doing their, you know,
spirited riding,
and they're cruising down the road, they have a way to stretch out. So that's the 10th most popular M8 Softail mod for the last 12 months.
All right, and so that's our 10 most popular. I feel like if there was an 11, it would be the Intimidator valves, because you know, the rear suspension is great on the Milwaukee 8 Softails. I think we mentioned that a few times. The front suspension, there's not really much of an improvement there, so a vast improvement would be those Intimidator valves up front. Now, of course, this is our 10 best sellers. Now, if you have any questions at all about anything on this list of the 10 best sellers, leave us a comment below or shoot me an email to support@dkcustomproducts.com.
Y'all ride safe out there.